everybody, this is Freddy with FreddyCanFly, and in today's video we are going to continue on with the V-bar and V-control setup series. In our previous segment, if you guys followed along thus far, we've went through some of the pre-radio setups. We've went ahead and paired the system with the V-controller. We went through a brief touch on the setup wizard and what things I like to use, what things I like to skip over initially. And we also, on the previous segment, went through the CCPM setup, so getting all of your servos to move in the right directions, or the right mixings, if you will. So if you guys are up to par and up to speed on this point, we're back to the machine. My main rotor is still off. For this step, this one I find to be one of the most important because it really took me a couple of minutes to figure all this out. But we're going to, now that we've already set up the CCPM and our swash plate and everything is mixing properly, now we need to center our servos and level everything out. Take in mind you could have done the servo centering first, but just because the setup wizard did the majority of it for us, I'm going to go ahead and 90 everything out afterwards. It's not going to matter. So get your swash leveling tool. Again, if you're using a machine where you can have the main rotor on and your tool slips in through the side or something, just use whatever's going to be appropriate, okay? So let's go ahead real quick. Let's power up everything. Go ahead and set my safe switches on. Let's power up the machine. And we'll wait for it to get paired. Boom, connected. Okay. So looking at the main rotor right now, the swash plate, I apologize, you'll see again that per our last segment, our mixing is all correct. Up is up, down is down. We've got our forward, our right, and our left. Okay, so that's where we left off. Now what we need to do is we need to get that swash plate level. That way we can go on and install the main rotor and do our pitch and everything. So here's what we're gonna do, guys. Let's jump over to our radio real quick. And you'll see here, okay, so if we start going in and scrolling through our selectable menus, transmitter setup, archive. Now you do have main rotor, but in main rotor, so this is gonna be what we're gonna use when we're like out at the field flying and we need to make some of those adjustments on the go, expo style, rate, etc. This isn't gonna have what we're looking for at this point in time. Kind of confusing, I know. This radio takes quite a while to get used to. It's like a different mindset. So what we're going to want to actually do is we're still going to go back down into our model setup. This is going to be, so under setup tools, you guys will notice we've already visited this selection where we did our heli wizard, okay? We do not need to repeat this at this time. So what I'm going to do is we want to actually go into, jump in, common, I believe it's going to be main rotor. So main rotor under the setup tools here. Okay, here we go. So now we've got our actual swash setup. We've got things like swash type, rotor direction. We went through all of this in the setup wizard. If you guys remember our servo direction menu right there, right? We did all that. Now here's the menu that we skipped over, which is the swash plate trim. You'll recall that I skipped over this one intentionally because this right here is going to allow you to add sub-trims to the specific mixing, but not the individual servos. So this menu we'll use out at the field to get a more optimized setup on things like our pirouetting. So that's going to all remain neutral. We skipped over that during the setup wizard. What we want to actually do is, let's go down here to where it says expert. This is going to unlock a couple of other menus. And here we go. You'll see right here, servo center trim. That's the menu that we're looking for, okay? Sorry, this little window keeps closing on me. So we're going to jump into servo center trim. And you're going to hear on the model that that's going to go ahead and center up everything. And you'll notice that I don't have any collective movement. So everything is centered. Now, depending upon, again, how we wired everything up, we're going to go ahead and adjust each one of these to get a 90 degree on our servos. Now, we're going to use my method, which I call the Master Servo, to 90 out my servos and level out my swash. Now, the way that's going to work, jump over to the machine with me here, is okay. So you'll notice right now, swash plate is not necessarily level, but also my servos aren't centered. Since this model has been used and I've set up several different systems, I've done the Spirit 2, I've done the Beast X, everything, all with this. I know that when I center my servos, my swash is level and my swash is centered. But let's pretend like that's not your case, okay? What you would do at this point in time, it's going to automatically center out your servos, so you can't move the collective. You're going to want to go to each servo, position on your servo horn as close to 90 degrees as humanly possible. They call this the mechanical 90. No electronic subtrims have been added yet. You're just going to try different positions and feel where those teeth connect on. And you're going to always find that there's always one servo that's freaking basically perfect, and then the other two are always a little skiwampus. I don't know why that is. It just is what it is. I've never had it be where all three servos are perfect. Now, this model in particular, though, the Tron model that I'm flying does come with an optional set of servo horns where you can actually adjust it mechanically and always get a dead 90. But in this case, we're not going to worry about that. So again, step one, fit your servo arms on as close to 90 degrees as possible. Step number two, make sure that your three linkages are all set to the exact same length. I don't care if the length is correct as far as where the swash plate sits or whatnot. As long as they're all three the same length, we can achieve a level swash and all 90 degrees on our servos. And I'm going to show you how that's done. And I call it using the Master Servo, okay? So, mechanically 90'd our servos, all linkages exactly the same length, attached to swash. That's where we're at. Now, all we need to do simply is find which of our three servos we want to use as our key servo, our Master Servo. In my case, it's going to be my front right servo because it does achieve basically what I consider a dead 90 mechanically, right? No electronic trims. My other two, they're off. So I'm going to use this as my key servo. And this is how easy this is to do, guys. Right now I notice when I get down eye level, right, and I'm looking at everything, I notice that my Master Servo is sitting higher than the other two. So right now, with this one at a mechanical 90, the connection point here on my swash, right, where I'm going to take my readouts, is sitting higher than the other ones. That's good. That's what I want. If it isn't, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and add an electronical trim to these other ones because I want my Master Servo to sit higher than the other two. Now, when I say higher, I mean the linkage rod onto the swash, right? I don't mean the servo being off-center. I'm saying at center, I'm going to go ahead and trim these other two servos all the way down so that this one sits the highest. And I'm going to show you why that works, okay? So let's jump over my radio. Let's pull it up here. And I'm just going to start here. Let's go with center trim channel 1, which I believe was elevator. Now you'll notice I can go in a negative or positive, right? So I'm going to be applying a little bit of negative to mine, and you'll notice here that it's starting to drop, right? It's dropping, it's dropping, it's dropping. That's what I want, okay? So I'm going to put a whole bunch in there, man. I'm going to put it all the way up to 100 for now. Now, if this were to be what I had to be at in order to fly, I would consider this bad. You're going to want to check out a different servo arm or something because your trim shouldn't be like this. But to make it over dramatic, I want to show you guys how easy leveling your swash plate is, okay? So I'm going to leave that there. Jump over to channel 2. Same thing, I'm going to lower that. That one's already pretty damn low, so I'm just going to leave this one at like, I don't know, like a 40. Just kind of judge it by the way everything looks. So now we know that channel 3 is our Master Servo. I am going to add 0 subtrims to that. I'm not even going to touch it, okay? So, looking at the swash, these two are sitting low, and they are not 90 degrees on the servo. This back one here for me is sitting at 90 degrees, and the link rod is exactly the same length as these other two. Here's how easy it is to level your swash and 90 your servos. Now, if we break this down, guys, in theory, and you look at the mathematics and the mechanics of the machine, if my servo arm is at a 90 degree, and my linkage rod is, let's say, 5 millimeters, all I need to do is make sure that my swash leveling tool comes in contact with these other two posts, and that should mean that I have now a 90-degree angle on my other two servos. Because if these have the same distance, so will these, right? And I hope that makes sense. That's what I call using the Master Servo or the key servo. And let's put that into motion here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and slide my swash tool on. Now, of course, only one of the arms is touching. The other two are sitting way down. So I'm going to do this one at a time, and what I'm going to do is I'll start with the elevator. I'm going to start to take away from that trim, and this will start to raise. And what I'm going to do is I like to have it to where it touches, and then I'll increase it to where it'll lift a little bit, and then I'll back it off a few clicks, and I guarantee it's going to be perfect, okay? Let me actually see if we can get a bit of a zoom. A little bit of a zoom on that so you guys can see. Okay, so jump over here. I'm going to go to trim channel 1, which again I had it at about a -100 just to really make it dramatic. So I'm going to start backing that off, and as I do, you'll see this arm start to rise, however you say that. And all we want to do is just keep clicking away, and it's getting close, so I'm going to start to slow down. And all I'm trying to do, guys, basically is you can see a little gap of light right underneath your swash leveling tool. Keep clicking until that bad boy closes. Once it closes, I'm going to give it a couple extra clicks, and then I'll see it lift this one. Once I see this one lift, I'll back it off a couple. Boom, we're going to be right at the sweet spot, okay? So, let me get where we need to be here. Okay, touching. And right there, it started lifting my other side. So I'm going to back off a few clicks. And we are going to end up right there at 35. Boom, okay? So, we now know that these two are good to go, right? We now have our channel 1, and I believe this one, other side was channel 3, are going to be... My servo is now at a 90-degree angle on these two, and due to the length of my pitch link arms, we are perfectly level right here, okay? So, let's move on to our next servo. We're going to do the same process, but this time I'm gonna deduct or add the sub trims until this touches, and then I'm gonna wait for it to lift both of these, right? Because in theory, if this one goes high, these two are gonna be low. So we're gonna watch and see when it starts to just barely lift, and then we're just gonna back off our numbers again. Okay, and let's go here, and let's just kind of start to back them off. This one had way too much. This one actually might even going into the positives. And there we go. And down here. Okay, now I can start to see that it's lifting my other ones. So let's back it back down. Right there. Boom. Okay, and that one ended at, hey, funny enough, look at that. That one actually ended right at a 35 as well. So you can tell that mechanically, my two servos on that side were off equal amounts, but in opposing directions. And that could also be because of the way the servos are mounting, the geometry or whatever. But I always like to rotate the swash leveling tool as well. Make sure absolutely everything is touching, everything is level. And guys, this is one of the most important parts you can do on a machine. This setup here, your neutral, your center stick, 90 on the servos, is going to give you even travel in all deflections and directions. Also, your swash plate's going to be level, so you're getting no drifting. And then next, we're going to check for a level travel as well, because that's just as important. And actually, nope, this one needs to come up just a little bit here. So hang on one sec. So I did see a little bit of a light gap on this side. So let's go ahead and let me eliminate that real quick. I think we're going to need to... Let's go right there. Looks good. Now we're touching on all. Okay. So that one ended up at about a 39. So It would have been fine to leave at a 35 to be honest, but I like perfection, so mine was just ever slightly off. So now, boom, we're level on all sides of our swash plate, and our servos all have a 90-degree angle. If you don't believe me, just look at your servo arms, and you're going to notice that they're now all... Now, you didn't even have to look at your servo arms at all while we did this whole process, right? All you did was look at these 2 points, or 2 of your 3 connection points, if you will, and due to the fact that we're using the key servo or the master servo, you're taking care of all that back end work. The method I don't prefer to use that some people do, and don't, take in mind, guys, there's no wrong way to do this, okay? This is just what I found to be the most efficient way. But some people will actually 90 their servos first, even outside of the helicopter, right? You'll be on the bench. Maybe you have a little servo centering box. Hey, man, if it works, it works. I just like this way because you get everything in. It's all wired up. Everything's fine. Every time you put a new system in, you got to go through this process anyways. So, boom, I just go off of 1 key servo. Boom. You know, if I wasn't trying to narrate all this for you guys, I could have had that done in like 2 minutes. You know, 2 to 3 minutes tops. I got a level swash, and I'm good to move on with my life. So, anyways, let's pull the radio back up here. So, this is what we ended up at. We got our negative 35 on one and our positive 39 on the other, just to really get it in. I did not add any trim to channel 3. And then this one here, of course, is going to be for the rudder. I never add trim to a rudder. I just don't. I found that a lot of systems, it causes issues with gain and drifting. This is my first rodeo with the V-bar, so I could be wrong, guys, but I'm not going to bother. And besides, my tail servo's got a dead center 90 anyways, so I'm just not going to worry about it. So now let's go ahead, let's exit out of this. And the next thing I want to check is going to be our travel, and I want to make sure that we're traveling level as well. And basically all we need to do that, let's go ahead and exit here. We can check here in our collective endpoints menu to make sure we've got a linear curve, which in here we don't have our pitch curve on yet, or our pitch curve, I'm sorry. We don't have our main rotor on in our pitch gauge. So I don't really know if we're at a plus 12 or a minus 12 or an 8 or a 9 or whatever. So for now, when I look at the amount of travel I get on the actual collective, I'm going to say I'm probably at least an 11, between 11 and 13 window, easy. So I'm going to leave this at 100. But if you want to really test how well your setup skills are, you could max this out, and then we're going to really see how level your swash plate can travel. But I'm just going to leave that, okay? So we know how much throw we have, relatively, minus using a pitch gauge. So here's what we're going to do now, is let's go ahead and let's put our stick at about center. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to slide my tool on one more time. And I'm just going to double, triple check real fast. Okay, we're touching on all cylinders here, okay? Now what I'm going to do is, on the positive aspect, I'm going to apply a very slight amount of pressure to the top of this. Not enough to get any false readings, but enough to not make it kind of jiggle as it goes up the shaft. And I'm just going to max out my collective, and I'm going to watch all 3 of these points. At no point in time should I see any light gaps or any movement of the leveling tool. Okay, so here we go. Looking good. And then we're going to check it all the way down as well. There we go. Okay, so we are level all the way down. Check it one more time. And we are level all the way up. Okay, so that swash right there has a level travel from all positive and negative ranges. If for any reason you do not yield the same results and you are getting a little bit of drifting here and there, take in mind, guys, we have that ability, that menu to trim if need be. I know they have the menu where you can trim the mixing features. But what I would say happens usually is that your centers are off. So I would revisit back into your servo centering, make sure your linkages again, just double check the lengths on everything, and maybe tweak some of those numbers slightly, because basically what's happening is at center, yes, I mean everything's programmed to be leveled out, but when we're traveling, if one servo were to just be a little bit off, then it's going to still travel a little bit off, and as you start to reach your peak ends, these arms really stretch out, and that's where you're going to see a lot of the loss and like resolution and stuff. So if you're getting that drifting, and if it's small, guys, if it's like you could slide a piece of paper in there, don't stress about it, okay? You are not, it's a fly barless system, it's gonna compensate. But if you're actually getting a pull where it's drifting, go back and revisit your centers, or look at some of the other trimming options. But in most cases, if you did everything the way we looked at it using the key servo, you should have absolutely zero issues, and everything should be ready to move on to the next step. Let me give it one last double check here. Everything looks good. Forward, backwards, right, left. Yeah, everything's good to go on my end, guys. So my next step is going to be to install the main rotor. And then we're going to put our pitch gauge on. We're going to set up for 0 degrees at center stick. So we'll go back into our sub trim menu there so we can center out the servo, or center out the swash plate. We'll end our servos for that matter. And then we'll go ahead and put on our pitch gauge, set up our collective ranges. We'll complete the tail. We should be able to do all that relatively fast. And then, guys, we're going to be ready to take this thing out and give it its initial test flight. So follow me on to the next video, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe. Remember, as always, if Freddy can fly, so can you.